All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. A Canadian professor teaching in the UK says he was targeted for his right-leaning views. And he says he's the latest victim of cancel culture. Eric Kaufmann was formerly the head of politics at Birkbeck University of London, but at the end of August, he quit after a 20-year career. Come next year, he'll be launching a new course at a rival university. Let's find out more. Eric Kaufmann is joining us from London. Hi, Eric. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Elias. Speaking to a Canadian, not a fellow Canadian.
Absolutely. Now, Eric, can you give our listeners the Coal Notes version of your life? Because you're Canadian, but there's so much more to your travels and where you've been your entire life. Why don't you tell our listeners a bit more about yourself?
Well, that's right. Yeah. So I grew up a lot in the Far East, born in Hong Kong, lived in Tokyo 8 years. I went to university. I went to Western Ontario, but then I also went over to the London School of Economics and did my graduate work in England. And I've been here for, the quarter of a century, during which time I've been an academic. So, yeah, it's a long way from Vancouver.
A long way from Vancouver, but you've had a tremendous amount of success in your career, and it's been a lengthy one. But what has been changing in recent years? I also taught at Concordia University. I worked at Concordia University for 7 years. I know the academic spheres quite well. It's all, academic spheres have always been left-leaning overall, usually, right? But something is changing, isn't it, with how anyone who goes against sort of the permitted doctrine and how they're treated. What happened to you? What do you think is happening on universities?
Yeah, so there's been a shift within the left from what you might call a liberal left to an illiberal left that's taken place maybe over the last few decades. Now, I don't want to over-exaggerate this. I mean, there was certainly an illiberal left even when you and I were going to university. I mean, political correctness, speech codes, that was all happening in the late 80s, early 90s. So there is a longer heritage to this, but the scale is simply much greater because of social media, and that enables the mobilization of Twitter mobs. It enables people to sort of put pressure on universities to fire people, to stop people from speaking. And we have good data on that in the US and in Britain, and it shows a very clear pattern of increase from about 2015-16, peaking around 2021. It's gone down a little bit, but it's still well above where it was in the 2010s, early 2010s.
Eric, can you tell our listeners what were your thought crimes exactly? Like what were you saying that was getting you in hot water with students online and the on the Twitter mob and all that?
Yeah, I think that any criticism of movements such as Black Lives Matter or movements that are claiming to be in support of trans rights kind of marks you out as so if you oppose some of the arguments of these people, that suddenly you become associated as a racist or a transphobe. Even something as innocuous as retweeting a video of Justin Trudeau not being able to say LGBTQ, even something like that on social media is enough to sort of land you in hot water. And that was part of the list of things that went into a complaint. So what happens is activists will then accumulate a portfolio on you, a file on you, and then they will put in an internal complaint, which then leads to an investigation and tribunal and all these other things, keeping you kind of in a state of anxiety because if you happen to be ejected from a university, there's really no getting back in when you've got hundreds of applications per post and reputations travel far and wide.
And Eric, I think everyone in their career has done something, said something, where they said, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Has there been any self-introspection where you've said, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done a couple of things, but I've apologized and you can move on? Or do you think that the environment there doesn't matter if you apologize, doesn't matter if you just try and flesh out your thoughts and try and provide extra context? It just doesn't matter. All that matters is the mob?
I don't think it really matters if you apologize. I think that'll only perhaps embolden the cancelers. I think what they are after is an orthodoxy where anyone who dissents from the ideology, which essentially consists of two parts. I mean, one is that there has to be equal outcomes for different identity groups. Number two, that no matter how microscopic the harm, imaginable, from saying something such as, anyone can make it in Canada, even something innocuous like that, or criticizing a group that's purportedly speaking out for trans individuals or native or black or whatever, that anything like that constitutes a kind of thought crime.
Mm.
Yeah, and these are really almost religiously held lines of sacredness. If you transgress them, it's like you have to be excommunicated. It's a very sort of strongly held ideology, and most academics and most students don't sort of believe deeply in it, but I don't think they have a real vocabulary for pushing back against it either. And so these people, they're able to multiply their force.
So what are you doing about it, Eric? Well, what are you starting up in January?
Right. So I essentially, this phenomenon of the woke left is an extremely important historical phenomenon, already led to more people losing their jobs than under McCarthy. It needs to be studied, and it's not being studied because it's uncomfortable. So I'm launching this course open to the public, including in Canada. It's an online standalone course on woke as the ideology. We'll study that objectively, dispassionately, looking at origins, how it's affecting politics and society. So that's something launching in January. And I'm also, and this is at an independent university called the University of Buckingham, it is 45 years old. I mean, it still leans left like other universities, but it has a bit more of a mix and has a very pro free speech leadership. And so I'm also going to set up a center in January to pursue sort of kind of countercultural social science research questions. So those are really the two prongs of this new venture that I'm trying to get off the ground.
So, Eric, what can we do? Because I am seeing some pushback. I don't think it's arrived in Canada yet, unfortunately, but I'm seeing some pushback in the US and the UK where there's more people just saying, hey, listen, we need to be able to debate ideas and say our opinions and then debate those opinions. What do you think are some of the common sense ideas that more universities should be embracing just so that we can once again have these conversations on campus without having the fear of getting quote unquote canceled?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem in a way is that universities, they copy each other, and they've all embraced this philosophy which says students are fragile, particularly those from protected groups. Anything which can be construed as a microaggression, so that might hypothetically offend the most sensitive member of one of these groups, is out of bounds. And that's more important to us than our traditional mission of truth and freedom, academic freedom. Until that value calculus changes, I just don't see how this is going to work, because you will always get the noisy activist groups that will pressure the universities. One thing that is happening to some extent is when the media is a useful force, when the media can sort of criticize universities that cave into these sorts of demands, that can create some kind of a counter incentive. I mean, that is one hope. It's a way that some progress might be made in a place like Canada, where the situation isn't great, I have to admit, for academic freedom.
Eric, we have to wrap up here. Why don't you just remind our listeners here at the University of Buckingham, what's the course going to be called, and if any of our listeners might be interested in how it progresses?
Yeah, well, it's simply called Woke: The Origins, Dynamics, and Implications of an Elite Ideology. I mean, if you go to my Twitter, you can find the link to that. It'll give you the course book and a bit more detail about how to express interest for when we start in January. So yeah, please do express interest, and hope to see a bunch of Canadians on the course.
Eric, thanks so much for your time this morning and touching base with the Canadian audience. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Elias.
That is Eric Kaufmann, formerly head of politics at Birkbeck University of London, but his course in January going to happen at the University of Buckingham.